Hello, White Sox fans. It is Crystal O'Keefe with episode 7 now of Visiting Dugout, brought to you by Southside Sox. Today on the show, I have Elizabeth Strom from DRaysBay. Hello.
Hello.
Please feel free to introduce yourself.
My name's Elizabeth Strom. I have been a Rays fan since I moved here in 2006, and I mostly edit, but also write for DRaysBay.
Thank you. So, as of this recording, I think we all know that the Rays are first in the American League East. But I mean, where do you see the Rays kind of sitting kind of mid-season and then closer to, September?
Well, I mean, obviously, I hope that when they were 13-0, we joked about how they'll be 162-0. Um, so that's no longer a possibility. They have lost 3 games. I feel like there's a lot of strengths to the team, but it's very hard to project from less than a month of baseball to what things are going to look like mid-season. So I hope that their team is strong enough so that they're always going to be in contention, if not for the division, at least for a wild card. It would be deeply disappointing after the start for them not to be in contention. But no, I don't think they're going to be playing. I forget what the percentage of wins is right now, like 700 ball all year long.
Man. Yeah, I was just looking at one of your more recent articles, and you were talking about how they, 16-3 and have a plus 83 run differential alone, and that is something I never see the White Sox getting anytime in the near future, let alone this season.
Yeah, I guess your offense has been a little slow to realize the season has started. But I have to say the Rays are generally not known for their offense. They had a great offensive team in 2021, but we're usually, just sort of barely above the break-even point for run differential. So this is kind of a refreshing start for our team.
Yeah, although to be fair, we are missing a lot of our best players.
Sure.
Tamanda Shin is out. Yohan Moncada, I think, is still kind of more day to day. So we've got some injuries so close into the season.
Sure. So do you think that the White Sox will be contenders this year?
Ah, I don't think so. I talked to somebody, actually, the very first one of these I did, obviously against the Astros. He said, "Oh, I can see them winning your division," and I just kind of laughed, and I was like, "Really?" Coming from you, like, that means a lot. But
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
it's always kind of a race with, White Sox, Twins, Guardians, and it's kind of who's gonna finish in the top three, because obviously, like, the Royals and the Tigers never really go anywhere anymore. So
It's true. No, I have to say, so the Royals' new manager is um I mean, his nickname is Q. So his Matt Quatero, I think his name is.
mhm.
And so he was the Rays bench coach for several years. And so now that he's managing the Royals, I sort of want him to have, I mean, maybe sniff at 500. Like he seems like a really nice guy, and I certainly don't want him to seem like a failure because the Royals aren't doing so well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have no ill will against the Royals, which I should, being a White Sox fan, but they're fine. And, maybe they can get to 500. Right now, their White Sox are 5 under 500,
Uh-huh.
so
Mhm.
looking great. Um, so, serious question: did the Rays steal their devil magic from the Cardinals?
No, I think we have our own magic. That's definitely homegrown.
Was it the Devil Rays jersey? Was that like put a put a spark in the plug or something? What?
Well, I mean, the story, of course, the Rays gave up the devil in their official name just before the 2008 season. And so we've always thought it was a true exorcism of the Devil Rays. And for the longest time, the team ownership didn't really have much in the way of throwbacks because the whole Devil Rays brand was so negative. But in the past, I'd say 8 to 10 years, they've begun bringing it back more, and we have these sort of retro uniforms and everything. So it's sort of fun. We don't think the devil will hurt us anymore.
I love those uniforms. I actually have a Devil Rays shirt with all those colors because I just
They're
love
great.
those together. It really pops. So,
Hmm.
and also in that same vein, is Kevin Cash the best manager in baseball right now?
Of course. Of course. I really like Kevin Cash. I mean, I don't know how one really evaluates managers, right? We're always kind of looking at win loss records, or we're looking at like what's the team's potential and do they sort of overplay that potential. But I think Cash just seems also like a very level-headed guy. You know, we had Joe Madden as the manager here for many
Mhm.
years, and I really liked Joe, and he changed the whole culture. But he was definitely gave off the "I'm the smartest guy in the room" vibes. And Kevin Cash, he just seems like he's happy to kind of, sink into the wallpaper. But at the same time, he's obviously a really smart person who has an excellent rapport with the team. You know, he's not the sort of manager where like so and so can't play for the Rays because he's going to clash with the manager. He's just not like that. So I really enjoy his personality and his approach to the game.
Yeah, Joe Madden gets one World Series with the Cubs under his belt and thinks he's the best, clearly.
Yes, yes. Well, I think he went to Chicago already thinking he was the best. He didn't win a World Series with the Rays, but he thought he was all that.
Yeah, never fun. So again, how do you feel just going into the series? Obviously, the Rays are really hot right now. The White Sox are not. Do you feel like this could just be an easy sweep for you guys again?
I mean, you've got some good starting pitchers, so I don't think it's an easy sweep. And also, the Rays also have sustained some injuries. So our starting center fielder is out; he won't be back this series. I think most significantly, the Rays are down three of their five starting pitchers, which is a hard thing to take, even if you have depth. No one has that much depth. So
Hmm.
one. Zach Eflin should be back Sunday, but he hasn't pitched for a while, so I don't know what that will be like. Tomorrow's game, you're getting sort of bullpen day,
Okay.
and so I think that could definitely be a bit of a toss up. First of all, I just never feel confident. So that's just even the day before the team clinches, I'm still sure they're not going to clinch. So I would never be confident, but I would not expect a sweep. I think that the Rays have holes, the White Sox have some strengths, and so I think this will be a good series.
Yeah, I know you start with Michael Kopech, who can be hit or miss. He's very good, but he also is very injury prone. So
Hmm.
that could also be a bullpen day for us. But you also get Dylan Cease in this
Yes.
series, who is the ace of the White Sox and so tough to even battle against.
Yes, I'm glad. So I have tickets for the Sunday game, and I'm really glad I have the Sunday game and not the Saturday game.
That's fair because yeah, Dylan is great. I've
Uh-huh.
seen so much progression with him, and
Now Saturday, we have Shane McClanahan pitching, and he also is pretty tough. Now, he had at the beginning of last year, he had one of those runs where you're like, no one can possibly hit him. And so this year,
mhm,
he's been very good. He hasn't been that, but he's been very good. And what I've enjoyed watching with him, and he's still relatively young, is that he even when he doesn't come out and dominate, he still seems to find a way to get people out. And so that's obviously a sign of maturing when a pitcher can say, well, my pitches aren't working ideally the way I'd like them to, but I still can figure out a way to make this work.
yeah. I have coverage that day, so I'm kind of honestly looking forward to a pitcher's duel because I'm a big pitcher's girl, and people, you love them or you hate them. I absolutely love them. They aren't boring to me for some reason, but I love, the mechanics behind pitching and seeing it happen. So
I, I'm
I
I'm totally
personally
with
can't.
you. Give me a 1-0 game with no walks,
Yes.
and I'm in heaven. So maybe we'll get that. Although I feel like whenever something is kind of like championed as this is going to be the big pitcher's duel, then it's like there's 10 runs in the first inning. So we just can never expect it to go exactly according to plan.
Right. All right, we will take a very quick break to pay some bills and be right back. And we are back. I again am Crystal O'Keefe, and I'm here to talk with Elizabeth about all things Rays. So we've kind of teased around this, but what are your keys for the Rays to really take this series? Obviously, Shane doing a great job against Dylan is a big one, but what else do you kind of predict or need to see from the Rays?
Well, I think the Rays hitting has just, with the exception of one or two games, has been just phenomenal. But it's usually, there's some players who've been really hot all season, but there's also been the sort of switching around. You see that someone has a cold streak, so someone has a hot streak. So for me, the key for the Rays on the hitting side is the sort of next guy steps up needs to continue, because you're not going to get everybody hot at the same time. And so, Yandy Diaz has been really great so far this year. I mean, Yandy's always been this big mystery. You probably know what he looks like. He's got biceps like the size of my entire torso. And so you look at him and you think, wow, power hitter. And he's not. He takes a lot of walks and he hits balls into the ground. And so sometimes they go for singles. But this year he's been doing what we've always hoped he would do, which is to elevate the ball more. So he's got, I think, like 6 home runs, a bunch of doubles, in addition to having the great plate discipline we're used to seeing. So he's been great. He often he'll lead off against left-handed pitching. So for him to continue to shine, and then for the supporting cast to take their turns of having good nights for different players. This last series, Taylor Walls, who's kind of an afterthought on our team, he's a shortstop. Second, third baseman, sort of a bit of a utility guy, but never a strong hitter. And we thought he was going to hit for the cycle in our last game, but instead of getting that last double, he got another home run. So that was really quite a game for him, not expected. So that's, the case with a lot of teams, that you just don't know who's going to step up. So the Rays need to continue to make sure that the guys are continuing to sort of, take their turn being the hot bat.
Mm-hmm. So in that same vein, who do you think is, the biggest threat on your team right now against the White Sox? I know we don't have a lot of lefties on the team.
Right.
So that kind of rules out Andy at least, but
so who I think will be the biggest threat against right-handed pitching on the
or
White
just
Sox?
the White Sox in general, but you are going to face a ton of right-handed pitching.
Right. So then our good lefties, so Brandon Lau, he's started a little bit slower than some of the other guys, but he's always a power threat. Then we have, to confuse everyone, we have Josh Lowe, whose name is spelled exactly the same as Brandon Lau's, but pronounced differently. So Josh Lowe was a first-round draft pick some years ago, had several cups of coffee last year. It didn't work out that well. And this year he's come up and he's like a different guy. I mean, he's got a lot more confidence at the plate. He's hit a few home runs. He's a great base runner. And so with all the new rules, if he gets onto base, he's a great threat to steal, go first to third on a single. So I think those lefties will be important. The other thing is that the Rays have a bunch of switch hitters. So I remember somebody commenting that, I think when we were playing the Red Sox, and the Red Sox commentator was saying one day they had all lefties in the lineup and one day they had all righties. So how can that be? How many players do they have? And the answer is that I think 3 of our regular players are switch hitters, so that they can turn around depending on who they're facing.
Yeah, we just have the one really good, and that's, in Yohan Moncada, but he's questionable for this series still.
And so what's his injury, and how long will he be out?
I think they've really just ruled it day to day, and it's just kind of back pain, which I get, I've got back pain too.
Yeah, and back's the worst. It's like you use it for everything.
You really do. I'm hoping he comes back, because he started off really hot this year.
Right.
Like, I picked him as kind of my player to bounce back because he'd been having a rough time. And there's a joke about odd year Moncada where he's just phenomenal in these odd years. So
right.
I'm thinking, like, this is time to shine, and I can take all the glory at Southside Sox of selecting the correct player this year. So I hope he's back soon.
Yes.
And you mentioned the new rules. I've been asking everybody, how do you feel about these new rules? Are you in favor of them?
So I had no idea that I would fall in love with the pitch clock. I mean, it is just, and it's not like I've heard people say, well, you're not a real baseball fan, but I mean, I am a real baseball fan, but I don't need to see a guy adjust his batting gloves for 15 minutes every at bat. And so I feel like what they're cutting down is the dead time. And I've seen, maybe, watching the Rays, maybe I've seen one violation. I mean, I thought that it would be very disruptive the first few weeks. And I don't know what you've seen, but I have not seen a lot of disruption. The guys coming up from AAA are used to this, and the other guys seem to have caught on. I thought there'd be lots of whining. There's no whining. And, you see a game that's all action, and then in 2.5 hours, you're done.
Yeah. I watch a lot of minor league baseball, so I was already used to it at least, and I
Mhm.
I personally love it. Not that I don't love sitting at a baseball park for 3 hours, like, stuffing my face with delicious, like, food and hanging out with my friends, but it is nice when you are playing a, West Coast team and it's midnight and you need to finish an article and you just wanna go to bed, so I appreciate that for what it is, and
I
again, I
I
never noticed it.
I wouldn't have thought I would feel this way, but I definitely agree. And also, what's funny is that it leaves me wanting more baseball. I mean, it used to be that you'd have a game that just really dragged, and by the end, you're like, "Oh God, I have to recap this game." But so I really wish I could turn it off. And now the game's over. I'm like, "Wait a second, I just got into this." And so, but in a way, that's a good thing because then I'm really looking forward to the next game the next day.
Mhm. Yeah, I had that happen the other night. It was a day game, and I was done with everything by, I think, 4:30 in the
Uh huh.
afternoon, and I was like, "Well, I've got a whole night ahead of me now," where I thought this would be over at, like, 6. So, it is pleasant for
Yes, it is. It
for
is.
us.
Now, as far as the bases, the larger size bases, I can't say I've noticed. I mean, people are stealing a lot more, but it's hard to
Mhm.
know. Is it the bases? Is it the, pitcher can't throw over that often? So I don't know how to untangle those. But I'm also, as much as I'm a good pitching girl, I'm also a base runner girl. So I really like action on the bases. My favorite plays are like triples, and so I enjoy seeing more base stealing.
Yeah, for sure. I know Tim Anderson has always been incredible at stealing bases,
Right.
so once he's back, I'm hoping it'll happen more, but even the guys that you don't normally think are going to steal a base have been doing that this
That's
season,
right. Hmm.
and I feel like there have been less hamstring injuries as well,
Uh
which
huh.
was always kind of a thing running to first base was
Right. Right.
immediate hamstring, but
That's a good point.
I also personally love that they banned the shift because it helps slow guys like Yasmani Grandal actually make it somewhere.
I have mixed feelings about that because I like the idea of the shift being part of, sort of smart strategy. I mean, it's like, why wouldn't you position your fielders where they're going to hit the ball? But, I think as long as it's a level playing field that we're all playing by the same rules, people still shift their outfielders. And also, once the ball is, I guess, out of the pitcher's hand. I don't know what the rule is when you can move, but once the
Mhm.
ball's out of the pitcher's hand, then the second baseman can move over. So there's still some ability to position yourself according to where you think the ball is going to be hit.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we can talk now more general baseball, which I always love to hear people's thoughts. Like who do you have meeting at the World Series, or who do you think are like our sleeper agents or underdogs? Just how do you feel about this season as a whole, based on the very small sample size that we've been able to see for this first
Um,
month?
so like I'll admit with some embarrassment that I'm not really good at having a good overview of baseball because I just sort of focus on the Rays and who they're playing, and so they'll like I don't know what the Mariners are doing and that kind of thing. So it's hard for me to speak more generally. I know the AL East is always tough and it continues to be tough. I think in our division, the Yankees are really good, Toronto's really good. The Red Sox have done us a huge favor by having an inexplicable offseason. I don't know what they think they're doing, but thank goodness you need to have a team that's going to lose now and then. I mean, the Orioles are above 500. So, the one thing I would say is that the AL East continues to be a really tough division. And I think with more balanced schedules, then it'll be interesting to see how that plays out because, it used to be that the stronger divisions all beat up each other. So they didn't have these enormous win loss records because they were playing other teams in their own division. And so now I wonder what that will look like with a more balanced season to see whether you have much bigger discrepancies in win loss records.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I love this balance season too because I'm able to see all of these teams that I don't ever really get to see. It's pretty rare that the Mets are in town for me to go watch, and that's
Hmm.
that's my National League team. So I just love that it's expanding, and I think it's growing the game of baseball in general with more people coming to town because some people just want to see Otani,
Right, right.
which
I
I don't
agree with
blame
you.
them.
And right, and why shouldn't they? I mean, why should there be entire swaths of the baseball world that never get to see him play?
Yeah, I sat in the rain on a very cold spring night just to see Ohtani and Trout
Ah,
completely slaughter the White Sox.
uh-huh.
And I mean, it was a miserable night, but I was like, I finally got to see Ohtani in person, and that was all I really needed. So,
Yes, that's good. I'm glad you got that.
yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm trying to also just work my way around the ballpark, so thankfully I'm like able to get out and see more. Like I'll be in New York this July for some games, so I can again see more people. I haven't seen
Mhm.
Aaron Judge in years, so it'll be fun. But
And it's also fun to see other ballparks. I really, whenever
mhm.
I go travel someplace, I try to make sure I can see a game. And so I've really enjoyed doing that. I haven't been to Chicago. I think right now my favorite park I visited is PNC Park in Pittsburgh. It's a really
Mhm.
nice one.
That is my absolute favorite park. We are going there in June when the Mets are in Pittsburgh too.
Uh-huh.
My spouse has never been to PNC, and I was like, you have to go. It is the best park, hands down. Don't listen to what anybody else says. It's incredible. The view is just the most gorgeous view you're ever going to see. The food is delicious,
It
and
is.
Andrew McCutcheon will be there again.
And
So
he's wonderful. I do also love it. So yeah, I would definitely go back there. But I definitely have to make a trip to Chicago because there's see a couple of games for of both teams, so I can
yeah,
check those out.
unfortunately, you have to go see Wrigley because it's not really a Chicago trip without going there, as much as
Yeah.
I loathe
I
that
just-
team.
so is there really intense rivalry between White Sox fans and Cubs fans?
Honestly, no, not really.
Uh-huh.
I would say, you know, the White Sox are more, just the rivalries within their division, and really that's like the Twins.
Right.
That's kind of the biggest one. There's usually not really a lot of inner fighting because they do have like the crosstown series every
Right.
year where they switch off in ballparks, and it's usually civil. I will say that.
Mhm.
White Sox fans are nice when Cubs fans are there, as long as they are, they stay in their lane.
Right.
And I've never had an issue at Wrigley, so it's
Yeah,
it's not too bad.
our
It
problem
used
at
to be worse.
Problem at Tropicana Field, who supposedly our rivals are the Marlins, but there's no rivalry. Is that we have a lot of transplants from New York and Boston, and they show up
Mm.
for the Yankees and Red Sox games, and so then it can get pretty tense because it's sort of like, hey, wait, this is our park. You're acting like you own the place.
Yes. Yeah, those two fan bases are for sure always acting like they own it. But I mean, I've been to Fenway, so I get it. It's
Uh-huh.
almost like a cult there at
It is.
Fenway.
Yeah.
And then, I'll see what the Yankees fans are like in that park too. But it's fun. I mean, it's the love of baseball. I get it.
Right. Right. It brings us all together.
It does. All right. So, where can we find you? Again, we know you are doing some work for DRaysBay.
Yeah, so the website is www.draysbay.com. And so, yeah, you can follow us there. You can follow us on Twitter. No longer verified, but we are the real thing.
I lost my verification today. I'm a little
Yes.
bitter. All right. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for coming on. Best of luck in this series. I will be rooting for you from afar, when you don't play my team. But yeah, so thank you so much for coming on,
Thank
and
you. It
have
was
a
a
good night.
pleasure. Yeah, well, looking forward to a great series. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye bye.